Captain Hana Kwan stood on the bridge of the Time's Horizon's Promise Times and watched the stars drift past the viewport. She had been traveling through space for 15 years, but the beauty of it never grew old. Her ship was heading toward the Galactic Council Station for another routine diplomatic meeting. It was supposed to be boring. Just like the last 20 meetings she had attended, Earth had joined the Galactic Council 43 years ago. It had been a proud moment for humanity. Finally, they were not alone in the universe. There were 47 different alien species in the Council, all working together for peace and trade. At least, that was what the Council claimed to be doing. Hana knew better. She had seen how some of the older species looked at humans. They thought Earth was weak. They thought humans were too emotional, too soft. The Vrek Empire was the worst. Their representatives barely hid their contempt during meetings. They called humans newcomers and children behind closed doors, though everyone knew about it. Ambassador Sora Choi represented Earth at the Council. She was a patient woman, always diplomatic and calm. Hana admired her strength. Sora dealt with insults and dismissive attitudes every single day, yet she never lost her composure. She believed that time would prove humanity's worth. Hana hoped she was right. The communication system suddenly came alive with an urgent message. Hana's heart jumped. Urgent messages were never good news. "This is Dr. Minho Yoon from the colony ship Times New Seoul **." A panicked voice filled the bridge. "We are under attack near Haven's Rest. Ships with no identification are firing on the colony. They have military-grade weapons. This is not a pirate raid. I repeat, this is not." The transmission cut to static. Hana felt her blood turn cold. "Get me Admiral Taeyang Park immediately," she ordered her communication officer. "And change course to Haven's Rest. Maximum speed." Haven's Rest was one of Earth's 3 colony worlds. 4,000 people lived there, building new lives far from Earth. The colony ship Times New Seoul Times had been carrying supplies and another 1,000 colonists to join them. Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen. His expression was grim. He had already heard the news. "How long until you reach Haven's Rest?" he asked. 18 hours at maximum speed, Hana replied. "Sir, Dr. Yoon said it wasn't pirates." "What did he mean?" "I don't know yet, Captain. But I'm sending 3 more ships to support you. Get there as fast as you can and report what you find." The next 18 hours felt like 18 years. Hana barely slept. Her crew worked in tense silence, pushing the engines as hard as they could. Everyone knew that 18 hours was too long. If there was a real attack happening, it would be over long before they arrived. When the Times Horizon's Promise Times finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Haven's Rest, Hana wished they had never come. The colony ship Times New Seoul Times was gone. Where it had been, there was only debris spreading slowly through space. Hana's sensor officer ran the scans 3 times. Hoping he was wrong, he was not wrong. 4,000 people had been on that ship. Now there were none. On the planet below, the colony was burning. Hana sent landing teams immediately. What they found made hardened soldiers weep. The attackers had not just destroyed military targets. They had gone to homes, schools, and hospitals. They had killed everyone they could find. 847 colonists were dead. 312 of them were children. Hana's teams searched through the wreckage for any clues about who had done this. They found pieces of weapons that did not match any known pirate technology. They found armor fragments with markings that had been hastily removed. And they found one intact piece of equipment that still had its identification code active. It was Vrek military equipment. Hana sent everything to Admiral Park immediately. She also sent it to Ambassador Sora Choi at the Galactic Council Station. Then she stood in the ruins of Haven's Rest colony and looked at the names being collected. Each name was a life that had ended in terror and pain. 3 days later, Ambassador Choi presented the evidence to the Galactic Council. Hana watched the meeting through a live feed from her ship. She wanted to see justice served. Councillor Veshtar of the Vrek Empire barely looked at the evidence. He waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "These claims are serious, Ambassador Choi," he said in his deep, rumbling voice. Too serious to accept based on such flimsy evidence. A few pieces of equipment? That proves nothing. Pirates steal military equipment all the time. Your people simply misidentified their attackers in the chaos. We have identification codes, Sora replied, her voice tight. We have weapon signatures. We have... You have the grief of a young species looking for someone to blame, another counselor interrupted. The Vrek Empire has no reason to attack your colony. This council will conduct a thorough investigation, but we must not rush to judgment based on emotion. Hana watched Sora's face. The ambassador's jaw was clenched so tight it must have hurt, but she maintained her composure. How long will this investigation take? Sora asked. These matters are complex, Veshtar said. 5 years, perhaps 10. We must be certain. 5 to 10 years? Sora's voice finally cracked. 847 people are dead. 312 children were murdered. And you want us to wait a decade for an investigation? We understand you are upset, Veshtar said. And Hana could hear the condescension dripping from his words. But emotional outbursts will not help the situation. This is why younger species must learn patience. The vote was called. The council voted to conduct a slow, thorough investigation. Only 6 species voted with Earth for immediate action. The rest either voted for the delay or abstained. Hana watched Ambassador Sora Choi stand up. The ambassador gathered her documents, placed them carefully in her case, and walked toward the exit. Every human representative in the chamber followed her. They did not run. They did not shout. They simply left. The last image Hana saw before the feed cut out was Counselor Veshtar laughing with another representative, clearly thinking the humans were running away in defeat. Hana turned off the screen. She looked out at the debris field that had once been the Times New Soul asterisk. She thought about the children whose bodies her teams had found. She thought about Dr. Yoon's last words, cut short by weapons fire. Her communication officer spoke quietly. Captain, we're receiving new orders from Earth. All ships are to return to Sol System immediately. All ships? Hana asked. Every single one? Yes, ma'am. Every Earth vessel in Council space is being recalled. No exceptions. Hana took one last look at Haven's Rest. The colony was destroyed, but the planet would remain. It would be a grave marker for 847 souls. Set course for Earth, she ordered. Maximum speed. As the Time's horizon's promised times jumped to faster than light travel, Hana thought about the Council's decision. They wanted patience. They wanted 10 years of investigation. They thought humans were emotional and weak. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 months had passed since the massacre at Haven's Rest. The Galactic Council had not heard from Earth in all that time. Every human ambassador had returned home. Every Earth ship had left Council space. The silence was complete. Counselor Veshtar found the situation amusing. He told other council members that the humans had finally understood their place. They were hiding on their little planet, too afraid to face the wider galaxy. Some species agreed with him. Others were not so sure. The Talarian Confederacy's representative, Counselor Thalvin, had tried to contact Earth several times. All of his messages went unanswered. He had a bad feeling about the situation, but he could not explain why. Something about the silence felt wrong. On Earth, the silence had a purpose. Every ship that had returned was now in orbit around humanity's homeworld, or its moon bases. Every diplomat was now in classified briefing rooms. Every resource Earth had was being redirected to a single goal. Director Junho Lee ran Earth's Strategic Intelligence Division. He was a quiet man who rarely smiled. For 3 months, he had barely slept. His team had been working day and night, gathering every piece of information they could find about the Vrek Empire. They had found what they needed. 23 Vrek military installations had participated in the attack on Haven's Rest. Director Lee knew the name of every commander involved. He knew which ships had been there. He knew where those ships were now. He knew everything. Ji-won Nam helped provide much of that information. She had been at Haven's Rest during the attack. She had hidden in a storage facility and watched through a crack in the wall as Vrek soldiers moved through the colony. She had seen their faces. She had heard them talking in their own language, coordinating their attack. She had barely escaped with her life. Now Ji-won worked with Director Lee's intelligence team. She identified Vrek officers from surveillance footage. She confirmed ship designs. She provided details that only an eyewitness could know. Every night, she saw the faces of the children who had died. Every morning, she came back to work. "We have confirmed all 23 targets," Director Lee told Admiral Tae-young Park during a secure briefing. "We know their defensive capabilities. We know their patrol schedules. We know everything we need to know." Admiral Park studied the star maps on the display. 23 targets spread across Vrek space. Hitting them all at once would require perfect coordination and timing. It would require weapons and tactics that the galaxy had never seen from humanity before. "Show me the Sunspear project," Admiral Park said. Engineer Woojin Kang stepped forward. He was young for such an important position, only 32 years old. But he was brilliant. He had been working on Project Sunspear for 5 years, long before Haven's Rest. The military had asked him to design a weapon that could strike targets faster than any defense system could react. "Sunspear uses relativistic kinetic weapons," Woojin explained, bringing up technical diagrams. "We accelerate dense projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed, using a series of gravitational slings and electromagnetic boosters. The projectiles are small, no bigger than a coffin, but at those speeds, they carry more energy than a nuclear bomb." "And you can deploy them through faster-than-light space?" Admiral Park asked. "Yes, sir. We drop them from FTL just milliseconds before impact. The target's sensors will not detect them in time to react. We have tested the system on asteroids. It works perfectly." Admiral Park nodded slowly. "How many do we have ready?" 73 Sunspear weapons are ready for deployment. More are being built every day. In another facility, Commander Yuna Song was training her Special Forces team. 500 men and women, the best soldiers humanity had, were learning new skills. They practiced infiltrating alien computer systems. They studied Vrek defense networks. They learned how to disable planetary shields without triggering alarms. Commander Song was a hard woman who demanded perfection. Her team called her the Ice Captain behind her back. Though she knew about the nickname and did not mind, she pushed her soldiers because she knew that any mistake during the operation would cost lives. "You will have exactly 4 minutes to disable the defense grid," she told her team during a simulation exercise. "If you take 4 minutes and 1 second, people will die. If you trigger an alarm, people will die. You will not get second chances." One of her soldiers raised a hand. "Commander, what about civilian casualties?" "There will be 0 civilian casualties," Commander Song replied. "We are targeting military installations only. If you cannot complete your mission without harming civilians, you will abort. Is that understood?" Rombody. "Yes, ma'am." The entire team understood the importance of that rule. They were not seeking revenge against the Vrek people. They were seeking justice against those who had ordered and carried out the massacre. There was a difference, and that difference mattered. Admiral Park brought all of the pieces together in a plan called Operation Reckoning. He presented it to Earth's Security Council in a closed session. The room was silent as he explained what would happen. "We will strike all 23 targets simultaneously," Admiral Park said. "Commander Song's teams will disable their defenses. Our ships will eliminate their military capabilities. Sunspear weapons will destroy their command centers and shipyards. The operation will take 6 hours from start to finish. 6 hours to cripple the Vrek Empire's military," one council member said slowly. "Admiral, this is an act of war." "No," Admiral Park replied. "This is a response to an act of war that already happened. They killed our people. The Galactic Council refused to act. We will act instead." "What about the Council's investigation?" another member asked. "The investigation that will take 10 years?" Admiral Park's voice was cold. 847 people do not have 10 years. We will not wait for justice that will never come. We will take it ourselves. The vote was unanimous. Operation Reckoning was approved. Ships began moving into position. Each one traveled alone, using routes that avoided VREC sensors. They moved slowly, carefully, taking weeks to reach their designated positions. No one in the galaxy noticed. Earth ships had always been quiet. Now they became invisible. Captain Doyun Shin commanded one of those ships. The Times Silent Requiem Times was a stealth frigate, built specifically for this kind of mission. It could hide from almost any sensor system in the galaxy. For 18 days, Captain Shin guided his ship through VREC space, staying in the shadows between stars. On Earth, the families of the Haven's Rest victims were told that something was happening. They were not given details, but they were told that their loved ones would not be forgotten. Many of them gathered at memorial sites. They lit candles and said prayers. They waited. In council space, life continued as normal. The VREC Empire was planning to expand its territory. Councillor Veshtar was arguing for new trade agreements that would benefit his people. Some species were concerned about Earth's silence, but most had moved on to other matters. The Talarians alone remained worried. Councillor Thalvin sent another message to Earth, warning them not to do anything rash. The message was received, but not answered. 180 days after the massacre at Haven's Rest, all the pieces were in place. 23 ships waited in 23 locations across VREC space. 500 Special Forces soldiers were ready to deploy. 73 Sunspear weapons were loaded and armed. Admiral Park sat in his command center on Earth's moon and looked at the countdown timer. In 6 hours, the galaxy would understand that humanity's patience had limits. In 6 hours, the VREC Empire would learn that silence did not mean surrender. He opened a communication channel to all ships involved in the operation. "This is Admiral Taeyong Park to all units," he said quietly. "Operation Reckoning is now active. For Haven's Rest. For the 847. For humanity." Across VREC space, Earth's ships began to move. At exactly 0400 Galactic Standard Time, the VREC Empire's military network detected a problem. 23 different installations reported strange sensor readings at the exact same moment. Before anyone could investigate, the readings disappeared. Then the humans appeared. Captain Doyun Shin's Times Silent Requiem Times dropped out of faster-than-light travel, 3,000 kilometers from a VREC military station. The station's defensive systems immediately tried to lock onto his ship, but they found nothing. The Times Silent Requiem Times was already transmitting a signal that confused their sensors. "Deploy ghost teams," Captain Shin ordered calmly. 4 small pods launched from his ship. Inside each pod were members of Commander Song's special forces. They wore powered armor designed to be invisible to VREC sensors. Within 90 seconds, they had attached themselves to the station's outer hull. Lieutenant Ariam Bey was leading this particular team. She had trained for this mission for 3 months. She knew exactly where to cut through the hull, exactly which cables to sever, exactly how long she had before the backup systems would activate. 2 minutes, 30 seconds, she said to her team. "Go." They went through the hull like ghosts. The VREC guards inside never saw them coming. Lieutenant Bey's team did not kill anyone who did not resist. They were not here for revenge against soldiers. They were here to disable defenses. The main defense grid went offline at 2 minutes, 15 seconds. 15 seconds ahead of schedule. "Target is clear," Lieutenant Bey reported. "You are clear to engage, Captain." Captain Shin acknowledged the report and opened fire. The Times Silent Requiem Times carried weapons designed specifically for this operation. They were precise, powerful, and completely focused on military targets. The station's communications array was the first thing destroyed. Then the weapons platforms. Then the hangar bays where VREC fighters were stored. In 3 minutes, the military station went from full readiness to complete helplessness. This same scene was happening at 22 other locations across VREC space. At VREC Prime, the Empire's home world, Hyun Choi led his fighter squadron against the orbital defense grid. Hyun was Ambassador Sora Choi's brother. He had joined the military the day after Haven's Rest, even though he was 40 years old and had never flown combat missions before. The military had accepted him because he was an excellent pilot. Talon Squadron, "This is Talon 7, Hyun said over the communication channel. "Remember, military targets only. If you see civilians, you do not fire." "Confirm." Talon 2 confirms. Talon 5 confirms. All 12 pilots confirmed. They knew the rules. They believed in the rules. The Vrek Prime defense grid was the strongest in the Empire. It could destroy 100 attacking ships in minutes. But the Vrek had designed it to fight against massive fleets. Not small, fast fighters that appeared without warning. Hyun's squadron moved through the defensive fire like dancers. They hit power generators and control nodes, always the exact spots that would shut down weapons without causing explosions that might harm people on the planet below. It was dangerous work. 2 fighters took damage, but no civilians died. On the other side of Vrek space, Admiral Taeyang Park personally commanded the assault on a massive shipyard. This was where the Vrek built their largest warships. 3 of those warships were currently under construction. They would never be finished. "All ships, target the construction facilities only," Admiral Park ordered. "The workers have already been evacuated by our intelligence teams. Fire when ready." Earth's ships opened fire. The weapons were precise, hitting structural supports and power systems. The 3 unfinished warships collapsed slowly, dramatically, but safely. No one died because Commander Song's teams had already made sure the facilities were empty. Admiral Park watched the destruction through his view screen. He felt no joy in it. This was not about feeling good. This was about sending a message. Across Vrek space, similar attacks continued. Engineer Kang's Sunspear weapons proved their worth at 3 major battle stations. The relativistic projectiles struck with such speed and power that the stations simply ceased to exist. The Vrek military did not even have time to evacuate, but these stations were pure military installations with no civilian population. The Galactic Council received the first reports 30 minutes after the attacks began. Emergency sessions were called. Representatives rushed to their chambers. Everyone wanted to know what was happening. The Council's monitors began showing live feeds from Vrek space. Someone was broadcasting footage of the attacks. Someone wanted the entire galaxy to see this. The broadcasts showed Earth ships destroying military targets with surgical precision. They showed Vrek installations burning. They showed the overwhelming force that humanity had kept hidden for 3 months. But the broadcasts also showed something else. They showed Earth soldiers helping Vrek civilians evacuate before attacks. They showed ships carefully avoiding residential areas. They showed the difference between revenge and justice. Then the broadcasts showed footage from Haven's Rest. The bodies of children, the burned homes, the destroyed colony ship. The footage that the Council had dismissed as insufficient evidence was now playing on every screen in the Council chambers. A human voice spoke over the footage. It was calm, measured, and absolutely cold. "You called it insufficient proof. You told us to wait 10 years for justice. You told us we were too emotional to understand how the galaxy works." The footage switched back to the Vrek installations being destroyed. "We call this justice. We call this proportional response. We call this the consequence of your inaction." Councillor Veshtar stood up, his 4 arms shaking with rage. "This is an act of war. The Council must." The transmission interrupted him. "The Galactic Council failed. We will not fail. Every installation being destroyed today participated in the massacre at Haven's Rest. We have the evidence. We have the proof. We have the recordings of your commanders ordering the attack." New footage appeared. It showed Vrek military officers planning the Haven's Rest attack. It showed them laughing about making it look like pirates. It showed everything the Council had refused to investigate. "We are not attacking the Vrek people," the voice continued. "We are attacking those responsible for murdering 847 humans. Your civilians are safe. Your cities are untouched. But your military power is broken." At that moment, Ambassador Sora Choi walked into the Council chambers. She had not been seen since she walked out 3 months ago. Every representative turned to look at her. She walked calmly to the human delegation's seats and placed a data chip on the desk. That chip contains all the evidence you refuse to examine, she said quietly. It contains the names of every VREC officer involved in the massacre. It contains communications logs, weapons analysis, and eyewitness testimony. It is yours to investigate, if you choose to do so. She looked directly at Counselor Veshtar. Earth remembers, she said. We remember the 847. We remember the 312 children. We remember that you called our grief emotional outburst. We remember everything. The attacks lasted exactly 6 hours, just as Admiral Park had planned. When they ended, 23 VREC military installations were destroyed or disabled. The VREC Empire's military capability was reduced by 70%. Their ability to project power across space was gone. Not a single VREC civilian had been harmed. Not one residential area had been touched. Not one school or hospital had been damaged. The precision was perfect. The restraint was absolute. The message was clear. Earth ships began withdrawing from VREC space as suddenly as they had appeared. They left no forces behind. They made no demands. They simply destroyed the military targets and left. Captain Shin's Times, Silent Requiem Times, was the last ship to depart. Before leaving, he broadcast one final message to the military station his team had disabled. For Haven's Rest. For the 847. For humanity. Then he was gone. The Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. The monitors still showed burning VREC installations. The evidence of VREC guilt was undeniable. The precision of Earth's attack was unprecedented. The restraint shown toward civilians was unexpected. Counselor Veshtar tried to speak, but no words came out. He had called humans weak. He had called them emotional and childish. He had laughed when they walked out of the council chambers. He was not laughing now. No one in the council was laughing. They were speechless. 2 weeks after Operation Reckoning, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Galactic Council met every day, arguing about how to respond. Some species demanded sanctions against Earth. Others wanted to investigate the evidence Earth had provided. A few quietly admired what humanity had done. Counselor Thalvin of the Talarian Confederacy had reviewed all the evidence personally. He spent 3 days examining communications logs, weapons analysis, and eyewitness accounts. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. The VREC Empire had committed the massacre at Haven's Rest, and the Council had failed to act. We must acknowledge the truth, Thalvin said during a council session. The VREC committed an act of war against a council member species. Earth responded with proportional force against military targets only. They showed more restraint than many of us would have shown in their position. Counselor Veshtar stood up immediately, his forearms spread wide in anger. Proportional? They destroyed 23 installations. They crippled our military. You killed 847 civilians, Thalvin replied quietly. They destroyed military targets and killed no civilians. That is the definition of restraint. The council chamber erupted in arguments. 18 species formally acknowledged that the VREC had committed the original attack. 12 species remained neutral. Only 7 species supported the VREC position, and most of those were economically dependent on the VREC Empire. The VREC Empire tried to mobilize its remaining military forces to strike back at Earth. They found that they could not. 70% of their military capacity was gone. Their shipyards were destroyed. Their command centers were damaged. Even with all their remaining forces combined, they could barely defend their own territory, let alone attack anyone else. General Yejun Park, Admiral Park's son, watched the VREC military movements from Earth's Defense Command Center. He was ready to respond if they tried anything, but he could see that they were not capable of mounting an attack. The operation had been more successful than anyone expected. The VREC military is in chaos, he reported to his father. They have officers arguing about who is responsible for the disaster. Some are blaming the commanders who ordered the Haven's Rest attack. Some are blaming the intelligence failures that let us strike unopposed. Admiral Park nodded. They are eating themselves from the inside. Good. Let them focus on their own problems. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening. 3 smaller species that had been threatened by VREC aggression in the past reached out to Earth. They wanted protection. They wanted to join a mutual defense pact with humanity. Scholar Unbi An was Earth's new chief negotiator. She had replaced some of the older diplomats who had grown tired of council politics. Unbi was young, smart, and she had grown up hearing stories about Haven's Rest. She understood what the colony had meant to humanity. "We appreciate your interest," Unbi told the representatives from the three species. "But we need to be clear about something. Earth does not seek to build an empire. We are not interested in controlling other species. We will defend our friends, but we will not rule them." The representatives understood. That was exactly why they wanted Earth's protection. The Vrek had always wanted to control everyone. The Talarians were better, but still expected obedience. Earth was offering something different: protection without domination. Unbi negotiated carefully. The agreements took 2 weeks to finalize. Earth would provide military protection in exchange for open trade and shared scientific research. No species would lose its independence. No one would be forced to follow Earth's laws or customs. It was a new kind of alliance in the galaxy, and other species noticed. Journalist Nari Joan covered the story for the largest news network in Council space. She had been reporting on galactic politics for 20 years. But she had never seen anything like this. Earth had gone from being dismissed as weak to being feared and respected in just 6 hours. "The question everyone is asking," Nari said in her broadcast, "is why Earth showed such restraint. They had the power to destroy Vrek cities. They had the weapons to kill millions, but they chose to target only military installations, and only those directly involved in the Haven's Rest massacre. Why?" She interviewed dozens of species representatives. The answers varied, but a pattern emerged. Most species understood that Earth was sending a message. "We can be ruthless when necessary. But we are not monsters. We can distinguish between soldiers and civilians. We can be precise in our anger." The Vrek Empire was facing a political crisis. Angry citizens demanded to know why their military had attacked Haven's Rest. The evidence was undeniable now. The recordings Earth had released showed Vrek commanders planning the attack and laughing about it. Protests erupted in Vrek cities. People who had lost family members in Earth's counterattack wanted answers. Why had their government started this conflict? Why had they lied about it? Why had they gotten so many soldiers killed for nothing? The Vrek government tried to control the narrative, but it was too late. The truth was out, and even propaganda could not hide it anymore. Councillor Veshtar was removed from his position by his own government. They needed someone to blame, and he was the most visible face of the failed policy. He had dismissed Earth's evidence. He had mocked their grief. He had assured everyone that humans were too weak to matter. His replacement was a younger Vrek named Keshtar. She was known for being more moderate and practical. Her first action was to contact Scholar Unbi An, Earth's representative, Keshtar said during their private communication. "My government wishes to open negotiations. We acknowledge responsibility for the Haven's Rest massacre. We wish to discuss terms." Unbi was surprised but did not show it. "What terms are you proposing?" "We will formally admit guilt before the Galactic Council. We will provide reparations to the families of the victims. We will reduce our military to defensive levels only. We will cooperate with any council investigation into the massacre. And in exchange? In exchange, we ask that Earth does not launch further attacks. Our military is already broken. We cannot defend ourselves if you choose to continue." Unbi considered this carefully. She consulted with Admiral Park and the Earth Security Council. The discussion lasted 3 days. Finally, Unbi replied to Keshtar. "We accept your terms with additions. The reparations must include funding for a permanent memorial at Haven's Rest. Vrek military reduction must be verified by independent observers. And you must provide all records related to the massacre for a full accounting of who was responsible." "Agreed," Keshtar said immediately. She was in no position to argue. 1 month after Operation Reckoning, the Vrek Empire formally acknowledged responsibility for the Haven's Rest massacre before the entire Galactic Council. Keshtar stood at the speaker's podium and read a prepared statement. The Vrek Empire committed an act of unprovoked aggression against the human colony of Haven's Rest. We killed 847 civilians, including 312 children. We then lied to the Council about our involvement. We accept full responsibility. We offer our deepest apologies to humanity and to the families of the victims. The Council chamber was silent. No one had expected such a complete admission. Keshtar continued. We will provide reparations as agreed with Earth's representatives. We will reduce our military. We will cooperate fully with the Council's investigation. We hope that in time, we can earn humanity's forgiveness, though we know we do not deserve it. Ambassador Sora Choi stood to respond. She had been quiet during most of the proceedings, letting Scholar Unbi handle the negotiations. But this moment required her voice. The Vrek Empire has acknowledged its crimes, Sora said. That is a start. Forgiveness will take time. Trust will take longer. But we are willing to begin the process. We are willing to move forward, provided the Vrek honor their commitments. The Galactic Council then passed new legislation called the Haven Accords. The new laws required faster response to attacks on member species. They required transparent investigations. They required accountability for military actions. They required the Council to actually function as it was supposed to. 18 species voted for the Haven Accords. 20 voted against. 9 abstained. It passed by the slimmest of margins. But it passed. Earth was offered a permanent seat on the Council's Security Committee. Scholar Yunbi accepted, but with conditions. We will serve on the committee, she said. But we will not accept empty promises. If the Council fails to act when action is needed, we will act on our own. The galaxy has seen what happens when we are forced to seek justice ourselves. We would prefer to work within the Council's framework, but we will not allow our people to be murdered while committees debate for 10 years. No one argued with her. They had seen what Earth could do. They did not want to see it again. General Yejun Park repositioned Earth's defensive fleets. 3 species were now under Earth's protection, and they needed to show that protection was real. Earth ships began patrolling areas that had previously been controlled by the Vrek or other aggressive empires. The power balance in the galaxy had shifted. Species that had been bullied for decades now had an option. They could seek Earth's protection. They could join alliances that respected independence rather than demanded submission. Not everyone was happy about the changes, but everyone understood that the galaxy was different now. Earth had proven that patience was not weakness, that silence was not surrender, and that justice delayed would become justice delivered by force. The Galactic Council would never dismiss humanity again. 6 months after Operation Reckoning, Haven's Rest looked different. The burned buildings had been cleared away. New structures were rising from the ground. The colony was being rebuilt, stronger than before, with better defenses and more people committed to making it work. But the most important structure was not a building for the living, it was a memorial for the dead. The memorial stood in the center of the rebuilt colony. It was a large circular wall made of black stone, 3 meters high and 50 meters across. On the inside of the wall, 847 names were carved in letters that would last for centuries. Each name had a small light next to it that never went out. In the center of the memorial was a statue. It showed a parent holding a child, looking up at the stars. The statue's face was not any specific person. It was meant to represent all the families that had been destroyed that day. Jiwon Nam stood in front of the memorial and read the names. She had known many of these people. She had watched some of them die. She had survived when they had not. And that guilt would stay with her forever. But the memorial helped. It meant they were not forgotten. It meant their deaths had not been meaningless. Ambassador Sora Choi stood next to her. They had become friends over the past 6 months. Sora understood loss in a way that few others could. She had spent 3 months watching the Council dismiss evidence of murder, knowing she could do nothing to force them to act. That helplessness had nearly broken her. They would be proud of what we built here, Sora said quietly, looking at the memorial. Not just the memorial. Everything. The new colony. The alliances. The changes to the Council. Do you think it was worth it? Jiwon asked. All the destruction? All the violence? Sora considered the question carefully. I think we did what we had to do. The council failed us. We could have waited 10 years for an investigation that would have found nothing. Or we could have acted. We chose to act. But we killed people too. Vrek soldiers. They had families. Yes, Sora agreed. War is never clean. But we killed only soldiers. Only those involved in military operations. We spared civilians, even though they did not spare ours. That difference matters. End quote. 30 species sent representatives to the memorial dedication ceremony. It was the largest gathering of aliens on a human world in history. Even the new Vrek representative, Keshtar, attended. She laid a wreath at the memorial and spoke briefly. The Vrek people carry the shame of what was done here, she said. We cannot undo it. We can only promise that it will never happen again, and work every day to honor that promise. Some of the human survivors were angry that a Vrek was allowed to speak at the ceremony. Others appreciated the gesture. Jiwan was somewhere in between. She knew that Keshtar had not personally ordered the attack, but it still hurt to hear a Vrek voice at the memorial. Captain Hanakwan attended the ceremony in full dress uniform. She commanded a new ship now. A flagship called Times Haven's Memorial Asterisk. It was the most advanced ship in Earth's fleet, designed to carry the memory of what happened and to ensure it never happened again. I was the first Earth officer to arrive after the massacre, Hana said during her speech at the ceremony. I saw what they did here. I saw the bodies of children. I saw the ruins of homes and dreams. I will carry those images for the rest of my life. She paused, looking at the faces in the crowd. Humans and aliens together, all paying respect to the dead, but I also saw what came after. I saw humanity refuse to be broken. I saw us come together, not in hatred, but in determination. We sought justice, not revenge. We punished the guilty and protected the innocent. We showed the galaxy who we truly are. Admiral Taeyong Park had retired after Operation Reckoning. He was 73 years old and had served Earth for 52 years. He had planned and executed one of the most precise military operations in galactic history. Now, he wanted to rest. But before he retired, he wrote a book. It was called The Weight of Command: Lessons from Haven's Rest. In it, he explained the thinking behind Operation Reckoning. He wrote about the moral considerations, the strategic planning, the difficult choices. One passage became famous across the galaxy. We could have destroyed Vrek cities. We could have killed millions. We had the weapons and the justification. But we chose precision over rage. We chose to be better than those who attacked us. That choice defines who we are as a species. We will fight when we must, but we will never become the monsters we oppose. The book was translated into 47 languages, including Vrek. It was required reading at military academies across Council space. Some species studied it to understand human military doctrine. Others studied it to understand human morality. Commander Yuna Song did not retire. Instead, she took on a new role training allied species in defensive operations. The 3 species under Earth's protection wanted to learn how to defend themselves. Commander Song taught them, though she remained as demanding as ever. You think training is hard? She told a group of struggling alien recruits. Training is supposed to be hard. Combat is harder. I would rather push you to your limits here, where failure means doing more exercises than see you fail in battle, where failure means death. Her students complained about her methods, but they respected her. They knew she was trying to keep them alive. Scholar Yunbi An became Earth's most influential voice in the Galactic Council. She was only 35 years old, but she commanded respect from species that had been in the Council for thousands of years. Her approach was simple: be fair, be firm, and never forget what happened when fairness was denied. The Council exists to prevent conflicts, she said during one session. But when prevention fails, the Council must provide justice. If it cannot provide justice, then individual species will seek their own. We have proven that. We hope we never have to prove it again. The Council took her seriously. New procedures were implemented. Investigations were completed faster. Accountability became real, instead of just a word in documents. But not everyone was happy with the changes. Some of the older, more powerful species resented Earth's influence. They thought humans were too aggressive, too willing to use force. They missed the old days when the Council moved slowly, and the powerful species could do whatever they wanted. Those species learned to be careful. Earth had allies now. The Talarians, who had always respected honorable conduct, became close partners with humanity. Several smaller species joined defensive pacts. Even some Vrek citizens, ashamed of their government's actions, expressed admiration for how Earth had handled the crisis. Dr. Minho Yoon's final transmission from the Times New Seoul Times was preserved and displayed at the memorial. His last words, cut short by weapons fire, had helped identify the attackers. The recording played on a loop at one section of the memorial. "Remember us not as victims," his voice said, "but as the reason humanity stands united." 80 and Frode. 80, those words became a motto for many humans. They appeared on military installations, on colony ships, on diplomatic buildings. They reminded everyone why Earth had acted as it did. Captain Do-Yoon Shin's ship, the Times Silent Requiem *, became legendary. Stories spread about how it had appeared from nowhere, disabled a military station in minutes, and vanished without a trace. Some of the stories were exaggerated, but Shin did not mind. He knew the truth was impressive enough. "We were not seeking glory," he told a journalist who asked about the operation. "We were seeking justice for people who could not seek it themselves. That is all." The Galactic Council's historical archives classified Operation Reckoning as the most precise military campaign in recorded history. Military analysts studied it for years, trying to understand how Earth had coordinated 23 simultaneous strikes with 0 civilian casualties. The precision was unprecedented, but the precision was not the most important part. What left the Council speechless was the restraint. Earth had the power to destroy, and the justification to use it. Instead, they had chosen to strike only those responsible. They had shown that power and morality could coexist. Councillor Thalvin wrote his own analysis of the operation. He submitted it to the Council's historical records. The humans did not act in rage. They acted with calculated precision. They proved that a species can be both merciful and ruthless, both patient and decisive. They waited 6 months before striking. They spent that time gathering evidence, planning operations, and ensuring minimal collateral damage. When they finally acted, they did so with a clarity of purpose that was both terrifying and admirable. That is what left us speechless. Not their fury, but their restraint within fury. Earth's reputation across the galaxy changed completely. Before Haven's Rest, humans were seen as newcomers, emotional and weak. After Operation Reckoning, they were seen as dangerous when provoked, but honorable in their dealings. Other species learned that humanity valued peace but would not tolerate injustice. The term, Earth's Ruthless Reprisal, entered galactic vocabulary. It became shorthand for justified, overwhelming force applied with precision. When species argued about military responses to attacks, someone would inevitably mention Operation Reckoning as either a model to follow or a warning to avoid. 5 years after the memorial dedication, Haven's Rest had grown into a thriving colony of 12,000 people. They lived under the shadow of the memorial, always remembering what had been lost, but also building something new and stronger. Earth maintained elevated military readiness but focused most of its resources on exploration and research. Captain Hana Kwan led the first joint human-alien deep space expedition. Her ship, the Times Haven's Memorial *, carried crew members from 7 different species, all working together to explore unknown space. When new species joined the Galactic Council, they were briefed on Haven's Rest. As part of their orientation, they were shown the evidence of the massacre. They were shown footage of Operation Reckoning. They were taught that the Council's failure to act had forced Earth to seek its own justice. "Learn from this," the briefing officers would say. Learn that justice delayed is not justice at all. Learn that even peaceful species have breaking points. Learn that the Council must function as it was designed to function, or individual species will act on their own. Admiral Park's final address to the Galactic Council, given just before his retirement, was preserved in the archives. His words were quoted in textbooks and taught in schools. We sought peace. When denied, we took justice. We harmed only those responsible. This is the human way. We do not seek conflict, but we will not run from it. We prefer diplomacy, but we are prepared for war. We value life, which is why we will defend it with overwhelming force when necessary. Cross that line again, and you will face not a species in retreat, but a species unleashed. The warning was clear. Humanity would prefer to live in peace, but if forced to fight, they would fight with precision, power, and purpose. The Galactic Council never forgot. Earth had been speechless when the Council dismissed their evidence. The Council had been speechless when Earth delivered its response. Now they all understood each other perfectly. Haven's Rest stood as a memorial to the dead and a warning to the living. 847 lights burned eternally, reminding the galaxy that Earth remembers, and Earth never forgets.